What's up, nerds and nerdettes? And we little nerd things all. It's your buddy Big Johnny G from Two-Gun Pixie presents Legendary Gaming! Yes, indeed! So how we all doing? We all doing good? We feeling good? You feeling like we want to be, feel like we want to be here? I guess so, because you pressed that button to play the video. So thank you all for watching the video. Thank you all for subscribing to our videos. It's really great to see the old subscribers back. It's really great to see your comments, and it's super cool to see newbies here, that's for sure. So what I'm going to do today is the beginning of a brand new series. And this series is called 5 Favorites. 5 Favorites. Now, I don't necessarily like the terms best of, top, greatest of all time. It's so subjective. I think it's a lot more honest just to say favorites. So this is a category of 5, sometimes a little more, but generally speaking, 5 games. And today, we're going to talk about my 5 favorite Dungeons and Dragon board games. I love Dungeons and Dragons. Regular viewers, you know this. You know that I absolutely love Dungeons and Dragons. I cut my teeth as a tabletop gamer on Dungeons and Dragons back when I was like 8 years old, and I love it. Haven't stopped tabletopping, haven't stopped RPGing, haven't stopped Dungeons and Dragons, regardless of the different editions. So board games, though. Board games. What board games that bear the Dungeons and Dragons title are worth it? In my opinion, of course. My humble opinion. And let's see if we get a better focus. Whoa! Move the camera. No! Ah! Sorry about that. This is what happens when you're dealing with filming it yourself. Anyway, so we're going to talk about my personal 5 favorite Dungeons and Dragons board games. All right, so as typical for these, we will start. I almost said stop. We're gonna start. I know my words. We are gonna start all the way at the bottom with number 5. My number 5 game, Dungeons and Dragons board game, my favorite, in the number 5 slot. It's an oldie. It's a goodie. This game goes back all the way to, I gotta check my notes, so I want to make sure what I'm telling you is fact-checked. So it goes back to 1988. I remember getting this game. I remember when it came out, and I remember throwing it down in the hallway, because we did a lot of our gaming actually in the hallway of the building, or in the front of the building, in the courtyard. And I remember throwing it down, and we played the game, and we loved it. And that game, Dragonlance. Now, you see it right up here? And it's going to be poof up here now. The magic of editing. So what has always caught my attention about this game is the different dimensions that you're playing in. Yeah, the different dimensions that you're playing in. You see, because in this game, height makes a difference. You have these little poker-like chips, and you get to stack them, and that's the height of your dragons. Dragons, yeah. Yeah, you're going to have a horde of dragons. What is a group of dragons called? I like horde because that implies money, treasure, gold. And, generally they're supposed to like that stuff. So let's go with horde until I find out otherwise. Each player has a horde of their own dragons, and you are flying around the board, and you are trying to get to the right altitude at the center of the board where the tower is, and you're going to grab that dragon lance, and you're going to make it back and land in your territory. Now, once you have the dragon lance, Yeah, you want to go hunting. You always do. You always do, because it makes it so much easier to take out the other players. This may be one of, maybe the, but to play it safe, I'll say one of the first board games I played where different characters had different abilities that broke or bent the rules a little bit. So I found that very interesting. So that is my number 5 slot. I think this game deserves a remake. I think that a new edition of this game could be pretty hot, actually, right now. So that was in my number 5 slot. My number 4, boo! A number 4 slot of my favorite Dungeons and Dragons board games. This comes in, this is a card game. This is a card game, and it came out in 2016, so it's just a couple of years old. And every time I've thrown this game down, whether here in the Nerd Wasteland or taking it out somewhere, every single time I've thrown it down, wow, people have loved this game. And that is Rock, Paper, Wizard. I love saying it like that. I really do. So Rock, Paper, Wizard. You know this game. Even if you haven't played this game, I'm telling you, you know this game. Trust me. Please, I'm your buddy. Trust me, you know this game. You know why? Because I'm willing to bet you know Rock, Paper, Scissors. Now, you might know Rock, Paper, Scissors, Lizard, Spock too, but don't worry about that. You know Rock, Paper, Scissors, so you know pretty much Rock, Paper, Wizard. Now, what this game does is it takes a fun concept where you are part of a adventuring group of wizards. You don't often see that a lot in player groups. You are part of a group of wizards that has just taken down a red dragon. Maybe the legendary Ashadalon, who knows? But you took down this grand dragon, and now it's time to divvy up the treasure. Yeah. The others don't want to share. You don't want to share. So it becomes a wizard on wizard battle. So what you're doing is you're playing from a communal spell book. Okay, so thematically that doesn't fit. Just let that slide. Please, trust me, let that slide. You're playing from a communal spell book. And depending on the number of players, will depend on how many spells are out each turn. So each turn, you're going to look at the spells. Everyone's going to get a chance to look at the spells, figure out which one they want to cast. And then just like, rock, paper, scissors, or you do it rock, paper, scissors, shoot, you're going to do that. But you are going to specifically point your fist at the other player around the table that you want to cast at. And you cast the specific spell that's on the card, because each spell has a hand shape, a little hand pattern that you're going to have to master. Really? Did I really just say that? A little hand shape that you're going to have to do while you're pointing it at the other player. So rock, paper, wizards. Yeah, you get it. And every hand gesture, every spell has an effect that either takes money from another player to you or divvies it up, pushes someone forward closer to the loot, pushes someone further back away from the loot, moves you closer to the loot, and that's it. Because at the end of every turn, everyone casts at the same time. Boom. I like doing that. And then, depending on who the first player is, you start with that first player, you go around. It's really simple. And then the first player that gets to, I can't remember the point, I think it's 21 or 25 gold pieces, that's the winner. This is a really simple game. It's a fast game. You can bang this out in no time. Rock, paper, wizards. That's a fun Dungeons and Dragons game. It's not deep. It certainly is fun. That was in the number 4 slots. All right, so coming in the top 3, the Trinity of my personal favorite Dungeons and Dragons board games. So coming in at the number 3 spot, holding the anchor for the Trinity there, Tyrants of the Underdark. Now, I'm so with area control games. I can take them or leave them. I have fun with some of them, that's for sure. But this is one of my 2 favorites. I recently spoke about my other favorite, in this past week, was it? This past week's Tabletop Takeout Tuesday. This is my other one. This is my other favorite area control game. And much for the same reason, but a few more. I mean, one, it's Dungeons and Dragons. That's fun. Two, it's Drow. Or do you say Dro? I've loved them ever since their first appearance, all the way back in the early Greyhawk setting days, when Gygax brought them into the setting and into the whole game system. I've been a big fan of theirs, especially the old school style ones. But I digress. You get to play Dro, and it's very political, social, political. What I really like about this, other than the D&D setting, is that if somebody is on an area you want or you need to control, you can assassinate them. Yeah, you can assassinate the other players. Very fun, thematically perfect for the Underdark. Tyrants of the Underdark. That is a good D&D game. If you're a fan of D&D specifically, a fan of Forgotten Realms, I think you're going to like this. Yeah. So now, coming into the last two, coming in with the wire. This is a photo finish, my friends. Trust me on that. Coming in the last two. Number 2 for Two-Gun Pixie's 5 favorite D&D board games. Number 2. Card dice game. Infighting. Oh, man, I love this game, Infighting. So it's a card and dice game. It's a card game in the sense that you are going to be drawing cards. Your character's information is on a card, as well as the information for bystanders, which is a very interesting part of this game, is that you will have a bystander possibly with you. There's a lot of bystanders. You probably will. I think there's more bystanders than action cards. And it's a bar fight in a Dungeons and Dragons setting. I'm going to guess it's a Forgotten Realms setting. That's what it appears to be for me, but it's not like so overly so that you can't, easily picture it in Greyhawk or Eberron. I mean, there's a Warforged in there. And it's a bar fight in D&D. So besides chairs and punches that you're throwing people, you have your special abilities. Yeah, makes it really cool, very fun. And I do have a pretty good track record winning this game. Not perfect. I wish it was. I wish I could sit here and say it was perfect. But it's one of the few games in my collection that I have a much better odds of winning based on past win-loss ratio, that is. But it is so much fun to play. I like playing it with at least 5 people, because that always puts one person out of your reach if you're not dealing with any special powers. Because generally it's you punch someone, or you throw a chair to the player on one side or the other, or you can cast use your ability if you roll that on anyone. So sometimes if there's 5 players, it's sometimes hard to get that person dead right in the middle away from you. That's for sure. So number 2, Infighting. Yeah, check that game out. And it's small, easy to carry around with you, too. It makes a great filler game. It really does. So now, you've been waiting. I know you've been waiting patiently for what could possibly be sitting in my number 1 slot. My number 1 numero uno spot for my personal favorite Dungeons and Dragons board games. So this was, I had to think about this for a moment. In fact, if there was an honorary mention, which I guess now there technically is, but there isn't, but if there was an honorary mention, it would have been the Dungeons and Dragons fantasy adventure board game. Parker Brothers came out. It was a British and English release primarily. It was hard to get here in the States. Had 2 expansions, got them as well. And it really does. It plays like 3.5 miniature game. Before the miniature handbook came out, this was kind of the way to go. And it worked out well, but it was kind of limited compared to what my answer for the number 1 slot is. And that's these 5 games right here. John, that's your cop-out. You can't pick 5 games for your number 1. let me explain, my friends. So the Dungeons and Dragons Adventure System Cooperative Games. There are currently 5 of them out. The order that they came out in, what happened to my voice there? It turned into Peter Brady. The order that they came out in, Castle Ravenloft came out in 2010. That was followed the next year in 2011 with Wrath of Ashadalan. 2011 also saw, I think it was at the close of that year, 2011 also saw Legend of Drizzt. Now, those 3 games were all published by Wizards of the Coast. The next 2 that came out, 2015, saw Temple of Elemental Evil. And that was Wizards of the Coast with WizKids. And then finally, last year, 2017, WizKids kind of took it over completely, I guess, from what I can tell. And they came out with Tomb of Annihilation in 2017. So those 5 games, now the reason I'm counting them as a game for this list is because they really are. There's a couple of alterations you might want to know in the rules, but basically, it's all the same. You know, there was one game, you're playing them all. Easy. Very cool. They're completely interchangeable. You can use not only the fighter from Wrath of Ashadalan in Temple of Elemental Evil, or the cleric in Legend of Drizzt in Castle Ravenloft. You can change it all up. You can also interuse the cards. So not only can you change out the fighter, but in each one there's a specific fighter deck, rogue deck, wizard deck. And every game that also has a fighter, rogue, wizard, you get it, cleric, they have their own decks of spell cards or action cards, and they're different. Even though they're both cleric, or fighter, they're different than the other decks. You can change them up too. You can use any fighter ability from any of the fighters in here with mix and match the cards to make a really killer deck. And that's why I decided on this instead. You can't even see it in this shot, but the fantasy adventure board game, the Dungeons and Dragons one by Hasbro. That's why, because I find these games here, these 5. This is not one of them. I find these 5 games, Tomb of Annihilation, Temple of Elemental Evil, The Legend of Drizzt, Castle Ravenloft, and Wrath of Ashadalan, superior because, well, first of all, you don't need a dungeon master. You do need a game master in the fantasy adventure board game. Both of them are limited that you're only going to go from 1st to 2nd level. I mean, come on. Even original basic D&D took you to 3rd level. I guess that's kind of hard to do since you use both sides of the card, so let's take it to 4th. I really do wish they went a little further, but they do level up. These games here, the Adventure System cooperative games, like I said, they don't need a dungeon master. Everything is interchangeable between them. You can play the setup adventures and missions that they have laid out in the books. But if you're really adventurous, and especially if you're an old dungeon master at heart, you can very easily take all the monster minis and tile minis, create your own adventure. You can make your own D&D adventure, and it'll be the closest thing you can get, I think, board game-wise, to actually playing Dungeons and Dragons. So that's why the 5 games from the Dungeons and Dragons Adventure System cooperative game, I want to make sure I got that whole thing right, take up my number 1 slot, because in a sense they are, and definitely they can be, one game. So that's really cool. Castle Ravenloft, in order that they came out, Castle Ravenloft, Wrath of Ashadalan, Legend of Drizzt, Temple of Elemental Evil, and Tomb of Annihilation. That was my number 1 slot. They are kind of one game. It's one system. So, going over it real fast, my number 5 slot was Dragonlance. My number 4 slot, Rock, Paper, Wizard. My number 3 slot, Tyrants of the Underdark. My number 2 slot, Infighting. And as I just finished saying, my number 1 slot is the Dungeons and Dragons Adventure System cooperative games, Castle Ravenloft, Wrath of Ashadalan, Legend of Drizzt, Temple of Elemental Evil, and Tomb of Annihilation. So there you go. My personal favorite five favorite Dungeons and Dragons board games. So thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for supporting us on Facebook. Thank you for supporting us on Twitter. Man, thank you so much for subscribing. That is so very cool. Thank you for subscribing to the show. Thank you for watching our videos, for clicking that like. Which side is it on? Here? For clicking that like, making a comment, and really for sharing these videos, on your favorite Facebook pages and such, and on Twitter. Wow, thank you so much. So I'm your buddy Big Johnny G. The Two-Gun Pixie presents Legendary Gaming, and I am out of here.